What if I told you that styling perfectly straight hair and intensely coily hair,
Right.
which, they look like absolute biological opposites on the surface.
Oh, totally. Like polar opposites.
Yeah, exactly. What if I told you they actually require the exact same scientific manipulation to master?
It's it's kind of wild to think about.
It really is. I mean, we look at a red carpet or, a high fashion magazine cover or just a curated social feed, and our brains implicitly accept this illusion of effortless perfection.
We really do. We want to buy into it.
Right. We see a celebrity step out of a limousine, the flashbulbs go off, and their hair is catching the light in a mathematically impossible way.
Yeah.
And we want to believe they just woke up, shook their head, and walked out the door looking like some ethereal being.
Just naturally flawless.
Exactly. But today, we are peeling back that glamorous velvet curtain to show you the heavy, unforgiving machinery that's operating just out of frame. So, welcome back to the deep dive.
Glad to be here for this one.
Today, we are putting you right in the middle of a high-stakes, zero-margin-for-error environment. We're going to understand the intense mechanics of high-end styling, the actual biological science of hair texture, and a grassroots movement designed to force true functional diversity into salons worldwide.
And the source material we are unpacking today provides just a fascinating, completely unfiltered window into this world.
It really does.
Yeah, we are analyzing a transcript from a YouTube interview featured on the B-Rad Celebrity Hairstylist channel.
B-Rad.
Right. And the host, B-Rad, sits down with Monet Everett. And Monet brings 25 years of deeply varied experience to the table here.
25 years. That's a massive career.
It is. She is a celebrity hairstylist, a public speaker, a beauty contributor, and the founder of the Texture Style Awards. What makes this conversation so compelling is that it completely strips away the glamour and focuses entirely on, the logistics.
The actual mechanics of it.
Exactly. The physics and the sociology of the profession.
So if you are sitting there listening to this and thinking, I have absolutely no connection to the beauty industry.
Right, like maybe you work in software development.
Yeah, software, corporate finance, or maybe you're just a student figuring out your trajectory. This deep dive is still fundamentally about you.
Oh, absolutely. The lessons transfer perfectly.
They really do. Whether you're navigating your own career pivot, operating in a high-pressure creative field, or, just someone who occasionally sits in a salon chair and hopes the person behind you actually knows what they're doing.
We've all been there, hoping for the best.
Right. But the mechanics we're about to discuss, they're universal. We are looking at extreme time management, the hidden sociology of how we categorize difficulty, and how one single person can aggressively shift the entrenched standards of an entire industry.
And, the drive to shift those standards didn't just suddenly appear when Monet reached the top of her field.
No, not at all.
It's a foundational part of her psychology. It's rooted in a childhood defined by intense friction with authority. In the interview, she actually describes herself as having been a super opinionated child.
Which is funny because today we kind of encourage that.
Right, but keep in mind that this was long before society culturally celebrated the idea of a highly opinionated young girl. It was an era where the standard adult response to a vocal child was immediate suppression.
Just shut it down.
Exactly.
Mm.
She shares this really specific, telling anecdote about the adults in her life. Whenever she would voice a critique or a strong opinion, people would tell her, if you can't do better, you shouldn't say anything.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that is a classic silencing tactic.
It really is.
It's basically designed to induce imposter syndrome and shut down a conversation by establishing this artificial hierarchy of who is allowed to speak.
Right, like you haven't earned the right to have an opinion.
Exactly. Most kids hear that and they shrink. They internalize the idea that their voice has to be earned through some impossible standard of perfection that they don't even possess yet.
But instead of shrinking, her brain translated that dismissal into an actionable directive.
I love this part.
Yeah, she heard, if you can't do better, don't say anything. And she just decided, okay, then I need to go acquire the training so that I can do better. And then I will be completely entitled to say whatever I want.
She totally weaponized the criticism.
She really did. She used the adult attempt at gatekeeping as the exact blueprint for her own authority. But, offhand comments from adults were just the beginning of the resistance for her.
It got worse, right?
Yeah, the friction became institutionalized very quickly. Her family and friends were not supportive of her pursuing cosmetology.
Which is tough on its own.
Definitely. But the real roadblock actually came from her high school counselor.
Oh man, the counselor.
Yeah. Her school had a vocational center, and she wanted to enroll in the cosmetology program. But the counselor explicitly barred her from taking the course.
Just flat out said no.
Basically, yeah. They threw down this incredibly punitive gauntlet, telling her she couldn't take vocational classes unless she managed to accelerate her entire academic track and graduate at 16 as a junior.
That is insane. It's such a clear, systemic attempt to protect the status quo, Just trying to keep her off a non-traditional path.
It's a perfect micro example of vocational gatekeeping, which is a massive issue in the education system. Traditional academic paths are treated as the default.
The respectable route.
Right, the safe or respectable route, while vocational trades are often stigmatized or actively restricted. The counselor was clearly operating under the assumption that a smart, capable student should not be wasting their potential on a trade.
So they set the bar impossibly high.
Exactly. By setting this ridiculous academic bar for entry into a vocational program, the counselor assumed Monet would simply give up and follow the standard track.
But she called the bluff.
She completely called it. She aggressively accelerated her coursework and actually graduated high school at 16, just as they demanded.
Which is incredible. But the craziest part of the logistics here is what happens next. Because the counselor had previously promised that if she somehow returned for what would have been her senior year, she could take the program. She held the institution to its word.
She forced them to honor it.
Yeah. She spent her entire senior year taking only cosmetology and a few electives. Then she goes to college. But she isn't finished with the vocational certification yet. The logistics of what she does next are staggering.
Oh, this blew my mind.
Right. During her freshman year of college, she actively commutes back to her old high school just to finish the cosmetology program.
Think about the psychological framing required to pull that off.
I can't even imagine.
A college freshman commuting back to a high school to sit in a vocational classroom. It requires an absolute immunity to social embarrassment.
You'd have to literally not care what anyone thinks of you.
Exactly, and a singular, unwavering focus on the end goal. She was told no by her immediate community, no by her family, and no by the educational institution itself. Every single point of friction just clarified her trajectory.
It's like it just fueled her.
It did. But here's the interesting thing. She viewed the cosmetology license simply as a pragmatic tool at that point, a way to cut hair and pay for her college degree. She had absolutely no concept of the ceiling of the industry.
That ceiling remained totally invisible to her until her senior year of college.
Right. She's assisting another stylist, putting in the hours, and this woman casually mentions the existence of celebrity hairstyling as an actual distinct full-time career.
And up until then, she didn't even know that was a thing.
No. Monet admits in the interview that up until that very moment, she genuinely believed celebrities just went to a regular neighborhood salon the night before a major magazine photo shoot or a movie premiere.
That is so funny.
She assumed they sat in a regular chair, got a nice blowout, went home to sleep, and woke up ready for the cameras.
I mean, if you aren't in the industry, you've probably assumed the exact same thing. We all have that blind spot regarding the industries we consume but don't operate within.
Right. We only ever see the final product. We don't see the specialized infrastructure required to create it.
It makes me think of, like, discovering the matrix of Hollywood. You realize there is this massive secondary ecosystem operating completely in the shadows. It's not just a stylist who happens to cut a famous person's hair. It is an entirely different profession. It's got its own rules, its own economy, its own intense pressures. Does this kind of hidden secondary career path exist in most industries? And is stumbling upon it what usually separates the competent everyday worker from the absolute top 1%?
I'd say yes, absolutely. In almost every professional field, there is the highly visible layer of work, and then there is the invisible hyper-specialized layer servicing the absolute apex of that market.
Like what? What's a good comparison?
Well, take the culinary arts. You have the head chef of a fantastic local restaurant, highly skilled, vital work, but then you have commercial food stylists.
Oh, right. The people who make the food look good for TV.
Exactly. These are professionals who use tweezers, syringes, blowtorches, and sometimes literal motor oil to make a burger look structurally perfect under hot studio lights for a national television commercial.
Because real syrup absorbs into the pancake too fast.
Yes. So they use motor oil. The skill sets overlap with a standard chef, but the application and the pressure are entirely different. What separates the everyday worker from the top 1% is often just mere exposure to that hidden layer, You cannot aim for a target you don't know exists.
So someone shows Monet the door, she discovers the Matrix, but moving from the realization that celebrity styling exists to actually operating inside that world, that requires a tectonic shift in a professional's mindset.
A massive shift. You aren't just doing the same job for more famous people. You're performing a fundamentally different function entirely.
And the transcript breaks down the unforgiving reality of what they call session styling. It's this stark contrast between working behind the chair in a salon versus working behind a camera on a set.
B-Rad and Monet dissect this beautifully.
Yeah.
It boils down to an intense recalibration of three factors: the time horizon, the internal clock, and the tolerance for error.
Let's talk about the time horizon first, because that completely changes the physics of the job.
It does. When a regular stylist works behind the chair in a salon, they're creating a look meant to be lived in.
Right.
They might tell a client, "Oh, this cut will settle in beautifully by tomorrow," or "The color will look perfect after your first wash."
Yeah, the work is organic, it has a grace period.
Exactly. A session stylist working on a celebrity for a major editorial shoot or a film production does not have a grace period. They cannot tell a film director that the hair will look great tomorrow.
The director would laugh them off the set.
Right. They have to make the hair look mathematically, structurally perfect that very second. And it has to look perfect from a highly specific, fixed angle of a camera lens.
Because every second on a set costs the production money. A stylist cannot afford a single blind spot. There are no casual retakes.
No, because retakes are expensive.
Yeah.
If a director calls action, the lighting is flawless, the actor delivers an Oscar-worthy performance, the sound mixing is clean, but a single strand of hair catches the key light wrong because the stylist failed to secure it properly.
That take is completely ruined.
The director has to call cut and reset.
Yeah.
And ruining a take on a major commercial or film set can literally cost tens of thousands of dollars a minute.
That is terrifying.
It is. The financial weight of the entire production briefly rests on the stylist's ability to control a few strands of keratin.
It fundamentally changes the temperature of the room. It's like the difference between performing in a live stage play versus rendering a CGI frame for a blockbuster movie.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Yeah, because a stage play is dynamic and forgiving, right? If an actor misses a mark slightly or a prop is an inch to the left, the energy of the live audience carries the scene forward. It's a breathing entity. But session styling is creating that CGI frame.
It must be absolutely flawless.
Exactly, because it is going to be frozen in time, magnified on a 50-foot screen, and scrutinized forever. Every single pixel matters.
And that demand for absolute perfection alters your relationship with time, which is the second major distinction they discuss.
The internal clock.
Right. Monet notes that salon stylists often operate under a delusion regarding time. A stylist might claim a cut and blow dry takes them 30 minutes, but they're failing to track reality.
They're ignoring all the buffer time.
Exactly. They're ignoring the 10 minutes spent shampooing, the 5 minutes discussing the client's weekend, the time spent sweeping the floor, grabbing a coffee. They view time very loosely.
But a session stylist times every single service from hello to goodbye.
They have to track every second because the production schedule demands it.
B-Rad brings up a detail about himself here that is just fascinating. He mentions he hasn't worn a watch in years.
Right, which sounds counterintuitive at first.
It does. Not because he is casual about time, but because his internal clock has become so finely tuned to the sheer pressure of set work that he intuitively knows exactly what time it is. He knows exactly how many minutes have elapsed during a specific physical task. He has completely internalized the countdown.
It's like a superpower.
But wait, isn't that incredibly dangerous? Like, if he is not looking at a watch and his internal clock is off by even 4 or 5 minutes because of a sudden distraction on set, doesn't that cascade and ruin a multi-million-dollar shooting schedule?
Well, it would be dangerous if it were just a casual guess. But what B-Rad is describing is a state of hyper-calibrated spatial and temporal awareness.
Like an athlete.
Exactly, similar to a professional athlete tracking the shot clock without looking at it. When you perform the exact same mechanical motions under extreme pressure thousands of times, your body memorizes the duration of the act. He doesn't need a watch, because his hands literally know what 5 minutes feels like.
That is wild.
He is mitigating risk through absolute repetition. And risk mitigation is really the entire job when you look at the unglamorous reality of touring.
Which is the third major difference. People hear celebrity stylists and they picture, private jets and sipping champagne while touching up a movie star's bangs.
The reality is not that at all.
It's closer to a high-end, sleep-deprived logistics operation. Monet shares this story about prepping for a small tour. She isn't just hanging out with the talent, she is buried in a hotel room surrounded by canvas blocks and wigs.
Just isolated, doing the labor.
Yeah, she has to conceptualize a design, submit that design to management or the production team for approval, and wait.
And once the design is approved, the real labor begins. Because she cannot just build the single approved wig. The environment is way too volatile for that.
You need backups.
She has to build 3 or 4 completely different, fully finished, identical quality backup versions of that exact same wig.
She is essentially doing 4 times the physical labor for one single appearance.
Right. She has to build contingencies for every possible variable. What if the stage lighting washes out the color? What if a piece of the elaborate wardrobe suddenly snags the hair?
Or, as Monet bluntly puts it, what if the celebrity simply wakes up and feels differently that day?
Which happens all the time. You have to pivot instantly, and you cannot ask the director or producer for more time to build a new piece. You just pull backup option C from the box.
Building endless contingencies like that requires a completely different artistic temperament. Creating one beautiful avant-garde hairstyle takes raw talent, but creating 4 perfect, structurally sound variations of a hairstyle under a ticking clock in a hotel room, knowing that a massive production relies on your exactitude.
That requires absolute engineering mastery over the physics of your medium.
Yeah, you cannot rely on a happy accident or a stroke of inspiration. You have to know precisely how the hair will respond to ambient humidity, the heat of the stage lights, constant kinetic movement, and gravity.
You can't just be an artist, you have to be an architect. And because every second costs money, and you cannot afford a single blind spot, you must have absolute mastery over every single type of hair canvas that could possibly sit in your chair.
Because if an actor with tightly coiled hair sits down in your makeup trailer, you cannot pause the production to figure out how to manage it.
You'd be fired instantly.
Exactly. And this zero margin for error environment actually exposes a massive systemic gap in how beauty schools have historically taught texture.
This brings us to the core technical and sociological failing of the industry. Monet defines diversity in a highly practical manner for her field. She says it is the ability to appreciate people different from yourself.
Which is a great baseline definition.
It is. In the context of the salon and the set, this translates directly to technical competence. It means mastering all 4 foundational human hair textures: straight, wavy, curly, and coily. Every human being is born with at least one of these textures, or a combination of them.
They are the fundamental building blocks of the medium.
Right. Yet, the standard educational system in cosmetology has, for decades, treated anything other than straight or slightly wavy hair as an exotic anomaly.
Which is just so damaging. And Monet calls out the deeply toxic backroom salon culture that this ignorance breeds.
It's so uncomfortable to hear about, but it's real.
She describes the hushed conversations among stylists when a client with coily hair walks through the door. The stylists complain, whispering, "Oh, that's going to take forever." They use actively derogatory language, or they outright refuse the service, claiming, "I don't do that kind of hair."
The sociology of that refusal is devastating.
It really is.
When licensed professionals treat certain natural biological traits as an unfair burden on their schedule, they're actively perpetuating the societal stigma that certain textures possess less inherent beauty.
It sends a direct, undeniable message to the client that their natural state of being is a problem to be solved, right? A difficulty to be managed, rather than a standard canvas to be styled.
And the client internalizes the incompetence of the stylist as a flaw in their own biology.
Which is tragic, and Monet is fiercely explicit about a crucial distinction here that constantly gets misunderstood. You must never conflate hair texture with race.
They are entirely separate variables.
Entirely. Assuming texture based on race is a massive systemic bias that leads to terrible styling decisions. She provides highly specific examples to break this bias down.
Right, like you have black people born with naturally straight, fine hair. You have white people seeking chemical relaxers because their natural hair is intensely tightly coiled. You have black people getting curly perms to alter their texture.
And she specifically highlights the common stylist failure regarding Asian hair.
This is a huge one.
Many stylists see an Asian client with straight hair and assume it will be an effortless, quick service, but they completely fail to understand the sheer density of the follicles and the thickness of the individual strands.
They don't have the technical vocabulary to manage the weight of the hair, and they struggle immensely.
Because texture is entirely about the physical structure of the keratin, the shape of the follicle, whether it is perfectly round, oval, or elliptical, and the density of the strands on the scalp, it is biology and physics, not demographics.
And the technical mechanics are where the traditional education system has truly collapsed. Let's look at how stylists fundamentally misunderstand curly and coily hair. The science shows that these textures are incredibly delicate.
Yeah, B-Rad jumps in during the interview and points out this rampant mistake. Stylists will encounter coily hair and immediately reach for complex pH-balancing chemical rinses.
They completely overcomplicate the biology.
They think they need to forcefully alter the chemical state of the hair, when often the hair simply needs pure, unadulterated moisture.
Right, and to understand why stylists make this mistake, we have to look at the mechanics of it. Stylists use acidic rinses thinking they need to forcefully snap the hair cuticle shut to lock in health and create shine.
But coily hair isn't inherently damaged, right? Its cuticle isn't necessarily frayed.
Exactly. Because the hair follicle is elliptical, creating the tight coil. The natural sebum, which are the oils produced by the scalp, cannot physically travel down the twists and turns of the hair shaft.
Gravity just can't pull the oil down the spiral.
Right. Therefore, the ends of the hair are inherently biologically parched. Applying complex chemistry to alter the pH when the biology just demands deep hydration is completely over-engineering the problem. You are basically locking the cuticle down over a dehydrated core.
It's treating a thirst problem with a chemistry set.
That's exactly it.
And the flip side of that ignorance is what we can call the heat tool fallacy. This is where stylists do actual irreversible physical damage to the client.
Oh, the heat damage. It's so common.
When a stylist who has only ever been trained on fine, straight hair encounters thick, coarse, or tightly coiled hair, their immediate instinct is aggression.
They equate thickness with invulnerability.
Yes. They think, this hair is tough, therefore I must use maximum force to tame it. So they reach for the flat iron or the curling wand, crank the temperature dial up to the absolute maximum setting.
Which is often like 450 degrees or higher.
Insane heat. And they clamped down on the delicate, dehydrated hair. They scorch the keratin proteins, permanently destroying the hydrogen bonds that give the hair its elasticity and structure.
It is infuriating to watch.
It is like assuming you need to blast your home oven at 600 degrees just because you're cooking a slightly thicker pizza.
That's such a good analogy.
You don't cook it hotter, you adjust the time, you adjust the ambient environment, you manage the underlying moisture of the dough. If you blast a thick pizza at maximum heat, you just incinerate the outside crust and leave the inside completely raw and ruined.
You're applying the wrong mechanism to the variable entirely. It is a fundamental failure to understand the material science of the medium.
Which leads directly to what is arguably the most counterintuitive, mind-bending revelation in the entire transcript. Monet reveals that after decades of high-level experience, she realized that perfectly straight hair and intensely coily hair,
The two textures that appear to sit at the absolute polar opposite ends of the visual spectrum.
exactly. They are actually styled the most similarly.
When I heard her say that, I totally had to pause the audio.
Me too. Straight and coily hair are styled the most similarly. How is that physically possible? They look like they operate under completely different laws of physics.
Well, it comes down to understanding the foundational variables of control. Both extremely straight hair and extremely coily hair require immense intentional manipulation to hold a new, structured shape.
Think about the middle of the spectrum, right? Wavy or loosely curly hair already possesses a natural degree of bend, grip, and texture.
Right. It often just needs to be coaxed, diffused, or refined into a style. It holds a pin well, it grips a hair tie.
But perfectly straight hair just slips right out of a clip.
Exactly, it fights the style. And intensely coily hair resists being pulled into a smooth, sleek shape.
So if you want to construct an elaborate, secure updo out of perfectly straight hair, or if you want to reshape tightly coiled hair into a smooth, cascading wave, you are fundamentally fighting the extreme natural architecture of the keratin strand.
Yes. You have to master absolute moisture control. You have to execute incredibly precise sectioning. You have to apply highly strategic tension and perfectly calibrated heat to break and reset the hydrogen bonds.
The specific products you use might differ, obviously, but the foundational approach, the requirement for absolute dictatorial control over the state of the hair, is identical.
It is like molding glass versus carving wood. You are fundamentally fighting the material's natural state to force it into a highly specific shape.
So help me unpack this massive educational gap. If managing different textures fundamentally boils down to understanding simple baseline scientific variables like moisture levels, follicle shape, and temperature control, why are there thousands of licensed professionals who run to the break room in a panic when a coily-haired client walked in?
That's a great question.
Why didn't the schools just teach the physics?
It is a failure born from the desire for rapid standardization.
Okay, what do you mean by that?
Well, vocational education, especially historically, sought to mass-produce competent workers as quickly and cheaply as possible. To achieve that, the institutions had to create a default canvas to teach on.
Ah, I see.
In Western cosmetology, the curriculum established fine to medium straight or slightly wavy hair as the absolute default. Everything else was stripped from the core curriculum and reclassified as a specialty service.
Or an anomaly.
Right. Instead of treating the four textures as equal, foundational pillars of human biology that every single student must master to pass, the system treated three of those textures as elective hurdles. And when an educational institution treats a common biological trait as an anomaly, students naturally learn to fear it rather than master it.
And fear breeds incompetence, and incompetence breeds that toxic salon culture Monet described earlier. The traditional education system was actively failing everyone. It was failing the stylists, who were graduating ill-equipped to service a diverse population, and it was failing the clients, who were being turned away, overcharged, or having their hair chemically and thermally destroyed.
It was a broken system.
So Monet realized she could not wait for a massive, slow-moving institutional bureaucracy to fix its own curriculum. She had to bypass the establishment entirely. She decided to build a new platform to gamify the education, which led to the creation of the Texture Style Awards.
And the timing of this initiative is incredibly poignant.
It was right during the pandemic, right?
Yeah, she conceptualized the awards during 2020 and 2021. The global landscape was entirely fractured. She actually refers to it in the interview as the time when the world was on punishment, which perfectly captures the psychological weight of the quarantine lockdowns.
We were all essentially sent to our rooms, and the beauty industry, which relies entirely on close physical proximity, was completely shut down.
The global focus was entirely on negativity, division, and highlighting systemic failures. Monet had been highly vocal about the lack of diversity in texture education for over a decade. But she recognized that just screaming into the void about injustice isn't always the most effective way to change deeply entrenched behavior.
You have to offer a solution.
Right. She realized that if she wanted stylists to actually engage with the science of texture, she had to make the learning process aspirational. She had to gamify the inclusion. Hairstylists are inherently driven, competitive people.
It is a creative art form, but it is an art form built heavily on visual comparison.
Absolutely. So he tapped right into that competitive nature. The Texture Style Awards is built around 10 specific categories. You have the four foundational textures: straight, wavy, curly, and coily.
And each of those four textures is divided into an up style and a down style subcategory, right?
Correct. That makes 8 professional categories.
Yeah.
Then she added 2 student categories for up and down styles, ensuring that the next generation is integrated into the ecosystem immediately. It comprehensively covers the entire spectrum of human hair.
But the true genius of the awards isn't found in the category list. It is found in the core judging criteria. It is this brilliant mechanism we can call the final texture loophole.
This is such a fascinating rule.
This single rule completely upends how traditional hair competitions operate. This is actually my favorite part of the entire deep dive. It totally flips the script.
Yeah.
Explain how this judging criterion works, because it forces a completely different level of accountability on the stylist.
Okay, so traditionally, if a stylist enters a curly hair category in a standard competition, the strategy is simple. Find a model who possesses naturally gorgeous, flawless curly hair, enhance it slightly with some high-end products, and take a photo.
The stylist is essentially taking credit for the model's good genetics.
Exactly. But Monet's competition eliminates that shortcut. Competitors in the Texture Style Awards are judged purely on the final hair texture they create in the photograph, completely regardless of the model's starting canvas.
The starting biology of the model does not matter at all. The final, engineered destination is the only thing the judges evaluate. Monet gives these incredible examples of how this plays out in reality.
Let's hear them.
Let's say your model walks in with incredibly tight, coily hair. If you, the stylist, possess the profound technical skill to properly and safely manipulate that delicate hair, straighten it flawlessly without heat damage, and construct a sleek, intricate updo, you do not enter the coily category just because your model is black or has coily hair. You enter the straight-up style category because the final visual texture the judges see is straight.
That is so smart. And conversely, if a model sits in your chair with loose, fine, wavy hair, and you meticulously set that hair on hundreds of tiny pins, utilizing precise tension and heat to manipulate the biology of the strand into a tight, bouncy coil, and you leave it flowing down, you enter the coily down style category.
It forces the stylist to prove that they are actually in command of the medium. But let me challenge this for a second.
Go.
Does judging the destination rather than the journey create a more objective measure of a professional's actual control? Or does it completely ignore the reality of what the client actually has? Like, is it removing the art of working with natural beauty and making it purely a technical exercise? It's like a sculptor being judged purely on the final shape of the statue, completely, regardless of the raw block of marble they were handed.
Well, it doesn't remove the art. It validates the technical foundation that allows the art to exist in the first place. If you are only judged on the journey, on passively working with what you are naturally given, you might just be relying on luck and good genetics. Did you really show mastery, or did you just apply a good holding gel?
That's a fair point.
By focusing on the final texture, Monet is forcing stylists to intentionally manipulate the physics of the hair. It demands that the stylist actively dictates what the hair will do, rather than passively letting the hair dictate the outcome. It entirely removes the toxic salon excuse of, well, this is just how her hair is, I can't do anything with it.
Right. Because in Monet's competition, the hair is whatever you have the technical skill to force it to be.
Is the ultimate undeniable proof of competence.
Yeah.
And she made proving this competence incredibly accessible. That is another massive factor in why this movement is actually working.
Historically, high-end hair competitions require the stylist to rent a professional photography studio, hire a lighting crew, pay a makeup artist, and cover exorbitant entry fees. It financially locks out the everyday, highly skilled stylist who might be working in a small town.
The barrier to entry is just too high.
But the Texture Style Awards shatters that financial barrier. Monet explicitly states that competitors can literally use their smartphones to take the submission photos.
Which is huge.
Yeah.
The only strict requirement for the photography is a solid, non-competing background. It could be a white wall, a black drop, pink, purple, or even a solid brick wall. Monet jokes in the interview, just not my busy background.
She wants the judges focus entirely on the silhouette, the structural integrity, and the texture of the hair itself, not the photography skills. Competitors are free to use extensions, they can incorporate elaborate hair accessories. The medium is entirely open as long as the texture is the focal point.
And the cost to enter is where B-Rad was practically losing his mind during the interview.
Oh yeah, he couldn't believe it.
The virtual entry deadline is June 30th, with early bird pricing available by April 30th. And the price point is staggeringly, almost confusingly low. It is $30 for a single entry. Or a stylist can bundle their work and submit 4 different entries for $100.
Which B-Rad rightly points out is nothing compared to traditional legacy competitions that cost hundreds and hundreds of dollars just to submit a single digital photo. $30 makes this a virtually risk-free investment for a young stylist looking to build a globally recognized portfolio.
It truly democratizes the opportunity.
Yeah.
It allows raw talent to rise to the top, regardless of the stylist's marketing budget.
But while the physical trophies, the burst of creativity, and the low barrier to entry are vital, the truly hidden genius of the Texture Style Awards isn't the virtual photo competition itself. The photos are just the top of the funnel.
The real power, the actual career-altering mechanics of this platform, is its function as a massive, highly engineered networking engine.
Yes, the economics of networking. This is where the deep dive transitions from the art of hair to the business of career trajectory. The awards don't just exist on a website where you upload a JPEG and wait for an email. The entire process culminates in a massive physical live event and a series of in-person educational classes. The economics and the psychology driving these physical events are brilliant.
Let's examine the live ceremony first, which takes place on August 13th. The sheer gravity of the people physically present in the room is what matters to a competitor.
You have heavyweight industry judges walking the floor.
Exactly. Simone Paninini, who commands an audience of 1.5 million followers. Marketa Breslin, Neil, the Color King. These are absolute titans of the industry. And alongside them, you have the sponsoring brands, physically present. Executives and reps from Bioionic, Wet Brush, Moroccan Oil, Biolodge.
These are not just corporate logos printed on a step and repeat banner. These are the actual living human beings who control budgets, hire brand ambassadors, and make decisions for multi-million-dollar international beauty conglomerates.
And this environment is where Monet and B-Rad explain the true, highly coveted art of the assist. How does a young stylist actually get a job working for these titans? How do you make the jump from a local salon to a celebrity set?
They completely demystify the process. A lot of young, ambitious stylists operate under the delusion that the path to success involves grinding away in a local salon while sending out thousands of blind, cold emails or Instagram direct messages to major celebrity stylists.
They send these messages saying, I want to work for you. I want to be your assistant. I want to travel with you. I want to be a brand ambassador.
B-Rad notes how exhausting and completely ineffective those messages are. They all focus entirely on the sender's desires. It's a constant barrage of I want, I want, I want. They almost never articulate what actual tangible value they can bring to the lead stylist's chaotic life.
More importantly, those cold emails fail because hiring an assistant for a high-stakes session gig is fundamentally an exercise in risk management for the lead stylist.
Right, going back to the liability of it all.
Exactly. If Monet hires an unknown assistant from an email and brings that person onto a closed set with an A-list celebrity, she's absorbing massive liability. If that assistant acts unprofessionally or panics when the production clock is ticking or speaks out of turn to the talent or takes an unauthorized photo, it is Monet's reputation that is instantly destroyed.
The production company doesn't blame the assistant. They blame Monet for failing to control her team because it is her name on the call sheet, her liability. She is the one who will lose the tens of thousands of dollars in future bookings.
Precisely. Therefore, major stylists do not hire strangers from an inbox. It is mathematically too risky. They hire people they have physically met, people they have had a real face-to-face conversation with at events, exactly like the Texture Style Awards live ceremony.
They want to look you in the eye, gauge your baseline energy, see if you are a proactive problem solver, and determine if you are a calming, grounding presence or an anxious, chaotic presence. You cannot read someone's nervous system through an email.
It is the stark, undeniable contrast between sending a desperate email from your couch, hoping someone takes pity on you, and the quiet, undeniable power of mere physical proximity at a live event. Being in the room where the decisions happen is 90% of the battle.
Is this proof that across almost any industry, not just beauty, but tech, finance, publishing, buying a ticket to a niche, hyper-specific live event is the absolute highest ROI career hack available?
I would argue strongly that it is. We talk incessantly about networking as if it is a purely digital activity involving sending connection requests on LinkedIn. But true, career-altering networking is about manufacturing serendipity.
Manufacturing serendipity, that is a brilliant way to frame it. You are intentionally engineering the conditions for your own luck to occur.
Opportunities, mentorships, and massive breaks rarely happen in a vacuum. They do not find you while you are isolated behind a screen. You have to physically transport yourself into the rooms where the gatekeepers, the brand executives, and the decision-makers are congregated. A single, natural, 5-minute conversation by the catering table at a niche industry event can bypass 5 years of climbing a traditional, rigid corporate ladder.
And Monet is aggressively engineering these conditions for her community through the live educational classes she set up alongside the awards. This is the part of the interview where the pure economics of what she is offering actually made my jaw drop.
The value proposition she constructed is almost absurd when you break down the numbers.
It really is. She organized a series of live, in-person educational classes at the Aveda Arts and Sciences Institute in Soho, New York City. The schedule is highly specific, tackling the textures head-on. The curly hair class is May 15th, the straight hair class is May 22nd, and the coily hair class is June 12th.
Let's break down the exact cost versus what the attendee physically and educationally receives. A ticket to attend these sessions is $115.
$115 in the middle of Soho in New York City, which, let's be entirely honest, is barely the price of a decent dinner and a drink in that neighborhood. And for that $115, what does the stylist actually get?
They get 2 hours of high-level professional educational classes from masters of the craft. They get a free entry into the Texture Style Awards competition, which we already established as a $30 baseline value. They get entry into a premium giveaway. And then they are handed the gift bag.
The physical gift bag alone is valued at over $250. over $250. The corporate sponsors, major brands like BioIonic and Wet Brush, literally provided 200 professional-grade curling irons just to put in the attendees' bags. B-Rad actually starts laughing during the interview because mathematically, Monet and these giant corporate sponsors are practically paying the stylists to show up and learn.
You spend $115 and you physically walk out of the building with $250 in professional tools, plus the elite education, plus the competition entry, plus the physical proximity to the brand reps.
It begs the question, why would multi-million-dollar brands agree to this? Why take a guaranteed financial loss on a gift bag for a couple hundred stylists?
Because it is a highly calculated long-term investment in the ecosystem. The brands understand the bottleneck in their own sales pipeline. If a stylist learns to confidently and safely cut, treat, and style coily hair, they are suddenly going to need the specific detangling wet brushes, the specific temperature-controlled ionic tools, and the specific high-end moisture products required to service that entirely new demographic of clients.
The brands are seeding the market. They are putting the exact tools in the stylist's hands so that those stylists become lifelong, high-volume consumers and vocal advocates for those specific tools.
It is a brilliant, highly functional symbiosis. The brand gets lifelong loyalty, and the stylist gets the education they were denied in school.
And the ultimate goal of all of this, the awards, the classes, the physical network, and the mastery of the tools, connects right back to the stylist's personal long-term career trajectory. Monet spells it out with absolute clarity, doing this difficult work, putting yourself in the room, mastering all 4 biological textures. It is the only way a stylist can actually choose their own destiny.
It facilitates the transition from a passive, reactionary career to an active, sovereign career. When you first graduate cosmetology school, as B-Rad points out, you are operating from a place of desperation. You take whatever random walk-in client comes through the front door of the salon, regardless of whether you actually know how to safely manage their hair, simply because you need to pay your rent.
You are entirely at the mercy of unpredictable foot traffic and the salon owner's marketing.
But when you master the underlying science of texture, when you build a portfolio that wins global awards, when you shake hands with the brand executives in New York City, suddenly you are no longer waiting anxiously for walk-ins. You have the authority to choose your clientele.
You can elevate your pricing. You can become a platform artist, traveling the world and teaching others the physics of hair. You can pivot into the hidden matrix of session styling, working on multi-million-dollar film sets where you dictate the visual language of a character. You dictate the exact terms of your art.
It is the ultimate evolution. It is the transition from being a replaceable laborer within the beauty industry to being an undeniable sovereign artist shaping it.
What an incredibly dense, revealing journey to unpack. We have covered a massive amount of ground today, pulling back the curtain on an industry most people completely misunderstand. Let's synthesize the vital universal takeaways for you. What we've learned from Monet Everett's story is that achieving the top 1% in any craft, whether you are manipulating keratin, writing complex code, managing a corporate team, or building a house, requires mastering a few fundamental, non-negotiable pillars.
First, you must aggressively seek out and understand the deepest underlying science of your medium. You have to know that managing hair is actually about managing foundational variables like moisture retention and heat physics, not just blindly applying complex chemicals because a bottle told you to.
Second, you must develop an absolute, uncompromising respect for the invisible clock. If you want to operate at the highest, most lucrative echelons of your field in a zero margin for error environment, you cannot afford sloppy time management. You have to internalize the rhythm of your execution until you don't even need to look at a watch to know exactly where you are in the process.
And third, you have to actively step out of your isolation. You have to manufacture your own serendipity. You cannot hide behind a salon chair or a standing desk or a cold email address hoping